guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hey, hello, my name is Angela. If you're new here, I make videos about law school, lawyer life, and all things in between. If you guys have been keeping up with my recent videos, you guys know that I recently quit Big Law, and I asked you guys to drop questions in the comments and on my Instagram about all your questions related to Big Law. So today is going to be a Big Law Q&A. We have lots of questions. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can. So let's jump right in, okay? First question is, do grades matter? Yes, grades matter for Big Law, especially if you're trying to go into Big Law directly after law school. Your grades are typically going to be how you even get an interview at a big law firm. Big law firms either come to your OCI at your law school, your on-campus interviews, or you can do resume drops and reach out to people, but your grades are going to matter because they're going to be looking at your resume. They're going to be looking at your grades to determine whether they have an interest in interviewing you. So the higher your grades, the more opportunities you will have to interview with big law firms. I know that that's like not the best or most ideal answer, but it is true. Now, one disclaimer that I'm gonna say on this channel, because I get it every day, and people are like, oh, my grandma's cousin's niece got into Big Law and she didn't have good grades. Yes, we're talking about probability versus possibility. So are grades the only factor? Do people who didn't have stellar grades make it to Big Law? Yes. But are you more likely to make it to Big Law if you have good grades? Also yes. So yes, grades do matter. Next question is, what does the day-to-day operation look like in Big Law? So I think this question is just basically asking what your day-to-day life looks like, and that's going to vary, right? When I say big law, I'm talking about a big machine. So I'm talking about a large law firm that has multiple practice areas. So you could be practicing bankruptcy law at a big law firm, you could be practicing real estate, you could be M&A, you could be a litigator, a certain type. There's different types of litigators. You could be an IP lawyer. There's all sorts. So your day is going to look different depending on what you do. For me, as an M&A transactional corporate lawyer, I was on a lot of calls, doing a lot of drafting, in meetings, and those types of things. So your typical day-to-day is probably gonna be drafting documents, emailing, and talking on the phone. The next question was, how many cases go to trial? So this person probably is not familiar with the fact that I am not a litigator. I am a transactional lawyer, so I've never been to trial a day in my life. I don't know much about litigation. I'm a transactional lawyer, but I do know in big law firms, you are less likely to go to trial, but I can't tell you how much, but you will find that there's a lot of settlements in big law because trial equals a lot of risk and a lot more money. The next question is, do you have partners or a team, or do you do all of the work on your own? So you absolutely have partners or a team. I'll speak from my perspective as an M&A lawyer, mergers and acquisitions lawyer. We do deals, we do transactions, and a team is key. Different members of your team will be delegated certain tasks, and that will depend on your experience level, what you're good at, you know, all sorts of factors, but you absolutely work in a team, and you guys are all working towards an effort of getting that deal closed. And that's one thing I loved about M&A, is because you do work on a team. The size of the team will typically depend on the size of the deal, but you will always be working with the team. The next question says, how did you navigate Big Law as a Black woman versus your white counterparts? And I think this question is probably coming from the fact that, like, if you look at the stats in Big Law, you know, minorities, we are very much a minority, a very low minority. I think the last stat that I saw was something like 5%. There's different disparities and all the things like that. And so it's such a big question. I feel like there could be a whole video just on that question. But one of the things I did is I did not go into Big Law, or I tried not to navigate Big Law as far as that way, like always differentiating myself. Obviously I was very aware, especially at different places throughout my career, that most people did not look like me, but I did not lean on that. I did not assume that people saw that first when we interacted. So many of the times you're working with people who don't even know what you look like. They've never seen you before. And so just removing that layer of like automatically assuming like people might be thinking things because I'm Black helped. And then also finding a community. You know, one of my first mentors when I entered the law firm was a very successful Black male partner, and he gave me a ton of advice about navigating the legal profession as a whole, and big law particularly. So I think finding your tribe, finding a network of other Black individuals who are also practicing law is super, super important, because they have a ton of insight and they can help you navigate, and you can call them and kind of lean on them. Another thing I did was attend certain organizations and events. So I always joined the, Black affinity group within my law firms. Every law firm I worked at, I was a part of that group. I would attend conferences. One of my favorite conferences is the CYOC conference. It's an annual conference, and it's where a ton of Black attorneys in big law, in-house, small law, public defenders, everybody gets together to network, and that is such an amazing space to network with other Black lawyers. So that was really helpful. So like I said, one, just kind of removing the assumption that people might see me different. And then two, finding my network, finding a network. And three, just doing my best and being me. Y'all saw me on here. I wore my braids, okay? I don't really do the nails anymore, but I wore my nails. I did the things, I was me at work. And so that's another piece of advice I would give you guys is, when I made the decision to go to the firm that I went to, my first firm, I said, Angela, you're gonna go in here and you're gonna be you. So I walked in there with my kinky hair. I was me. I did not try to keep up with the Joneses. I was me authentically, and that was the best decision I could have made. Just being me was one of those, and unapologetically me. So yeah, like I said, I've said so much. I could make a whole video on that, but so let's talk about that in another video. Next question is, what law courses will really let someone know a big law is for them? This question was a little hard for me to answer, because I can't think of anything that will directly correlate to like, this is how big law is. I mean, law school is just not practical enough. I would say your best shot is to do an internship, do a summer associate internship, and talk to other lawyers. I don't think it's a class in law school. I think it's experience and talking to other big law lawyers and really getting them to give you their honest take on what their life looks like and what their workload looks like. The next question is, what are some tips for one to maintain their peace and their sanity while being constantly under pressure? And I think there's a couple things. One is setting boundaries. I've talked about my boundaries on here, and for some people, they might not seem like enough, or they might not seem like a big deal, but there was just certain things that were always gonna be a boundary for me. Like there's a dance fitness workout class that I go to at least twice a week, and it's at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm going. I go no matter what, no matter how busy I am, no matter what deals I'm working on, I go. And that is my time for me. I get to take that time to go. And in that class, I have no time to think about anything else but trying to keep up with those moves, okay? Because those girls in my class can dance, okay? So that's one of the things, like, just setting boundaries. Another thing is, like, I eat dinner with my family every single night. I'm going to break in my day for dinner. I mean, that was my big law life when I used to work late. But like, yeah, setting boundaries is one. And then two is just taking time for self-care. You have to take care of yourself. So everybody's self-care looks different, but whatever your self-care looks like for you is important. And I would say also therapy at one point was something that was helpful for me. I don't think I've ever talked about therapy, but there was one point in my career where I was just like stressed. I was just so stressed. And I got tired of like complaining about it to my husband or like my family or my friends. Like, I just felt like I was burdening them with that. So I made my job pay for my therapy. I used my insurance to get therapy so I could complain about work to my therapist. And I know therapy is about solutions and stuff, but sometimes you just need to vent and get things out, and that was helpful for me. So yeah, just setting boundaries and self-care. The next question was, do you have time for yourself and your family? Is it really as hard as people say it is? Yeah, you have time for your friends and your family. It's just, I've talked about this before, but it's really just the unpredictability, right? Like, there were some nights where my nights were interrupted. I could do whatever I want. I could be at dinner. I could go whatever and be fine and not be interrupted. But there were nights that I wasn't, I was interrupted at dinner. I had to halt dinner short and go back upstairs, or, work all night, work all weekend. And so for me, it's not that I didn't have the time. It was just such an unpredictable time. And unpredictability just breeds stress, because you can have a plan for something and then work comes up and then your plan is ruined. And I know that happens probably to everybody, but I don't think that it happens as often in some professions as it does in professions like, you know, law, and maybe like if you're in like public accounting or something like that, where like, yeah, sometimes you're just going and not stopping. The next question is kind of similar. It's like, what are the hours typically like? So your hours will vary based on your busyness level. I think for litigators, they might be able to regulate their time a little bit more because a lot of their matters are based on like the courts, and you know, courts have vacations, they have closed times, you know, whatever. For a transactional lawyer, I mean, people make up their deadlines. Essentially, if they want to get a deal closed in 3 weeks, that's the deadline, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it a lot of the times. It's just what we're working towards. So the hours can be unpredictable. The hours can be fine. Some weeks it was 40-hour work week. You know, some weeks it was a 32-hour work week, and some weeks it was 65 or 70 hours. So it's up and down, and that can be pretty hard. And so it really just depends on how busy you are. When you're not that busy, I mean, it's pretty fine. Or when you're steady, it's fine. It's when you're crazy busy is when it can get a little hard. But one way to gauge the hours is looking at a firm's billable hour requirement. And billable hour requirements will vary by firm and also sometimes locale. So you have some firms that like have a 2,500 billable hour requirement, and billable hours means that you're actually billing a client for that time. And you have to realize, like, you know, if you work 10 hours in a day, all 10 hours aren't billable. Sometimes you're doing admin stuff, you're taking breaks, you're doing all sorts of things that aren't billable. So a good way to gauge kind of what hours will look like is taking that billable hour requirement and dividing it, you know, by the, you know, 5-day work weeks, and just accounting for some days you might bill 2 hours and other days you might bill 16. Like, yeah, that's happened to me before. Next question is, a litigation lawyer's salary slightly lower than transactional? And I've actually heard some rumblings about this at different law firms, but I personally have never seen that in a law firm that I've worked at. If you guys are new here, I've worked at 3 large law firms, and I've never seen where, you know, litigation's associates or litigation lawyers' salaries were lower just because they were in litigation. With big law, a lot of big law firms do lockstep, where you basically know exactly what your salary will be every year up to like year 7 or year 8. Yeah, so I would say for the most part, probably not. Now, like I said, I have heard rumblings about that, and I think the reason behind that is like litigation is costly, and transactions are costly too, but they're usually done to make you more money, which even if you're the winner in a lawsuit, you still spent money bringing that lawsuit or defending that lawsuit. So clients are less happy about litigation than they are about transactions, if that makes sense. Okay, the next question we have to read, it says, I am currently an undergraduate student majoring in biochemistry and will be attending law school starting next fall. I would like to go into patent law, but have heard conflicting things about big firm requirements to be a patent lawyer. Do you have to get a graduate degree in the field do you want to practice in, or is an undergraduate in JD sufficient for practice things? So typically for lawyers, my advice is always like, don't waste your time, go get a master's, go ahead and start your career after, you know, you get your law degree. But I have seen for IP lawyers, particularly like patent and stuff like that, is they do want you to have certain credentials and certain experience in the field when practicing that type of law. And I don't know that it necessarily means you have to go get a master's, but they are going to want to see that biochemistry undergrad. They are going to want to see that you have been on a path to patent law. And that's just like my peripheral experience. I don't have any direct experience with that, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt. But when you start law school, that would be a great question to talk to your career services about, because they will know, but they absolutely want to see you on a path to practicing that type of law. You can't, like, as an M&A lawyer, I was a communications major. I did not even major in business or anything like that, and that had no bearings on me being an M&A lawyer. But for you IP lawyers, particularly like when it comes to those specialties like patent, they do want to see you're on a path to being a patent lawyer. And if I have any patent lawyers that are watching this and can chime in on that a little bit further, like with a little bit more expertise, I would love for you to share your thoughts on that in the comments. Next one is sort of a loaded question too, so I'm gonna have to read it, but it says, how do annual bonuses work in big law? Do you have to get extra hours to get them, or is it based on how many deals you close during this year or during the year? And so I'll answer the first two parts of the question. So annual bonuses work in big law. It really depends on the firm, but for the most part, your annual bonus, you're going to get it as long as you meet your billable hour requirement. So if your billable hour requirement is 2,000 hours and you hit 2,001 hours, you're gonna get a bonus. Now, if you hit 2,200 hours, you're gonna get an extra bonus on top of that. That's typically how firms work. That bonus is if you meet your target, and then you get more money if you go above and beyond the target. The next part of the question says, also M&A seems kind of niche, so how did you navigate interviewing for non-M&A in-house roles? Y'all, that is such a good question, and it was something that I was worried about for no reason at all. That is one of the perks of being a big law transactional attorney, is people have confidence in your ability because they know you've done very high level, hard, substantive work. And so when I was interviewing, that was one of my concerns. But you're a lawyer, right? You're a transactional lawyer. You've done transactions, you have a knowledge base and a skill set. The underlying skill set that you learn as an M&A lawyer is applicable to many parts of transactional law and just not deals. So I don't think M&A is as niche as one might think it is, because of the skill sets that you learn and the things that you have exposure to. So honestly, I didn't have to sell much. I really didn't. People automatically assumed, even assured me at times in my interview, that they had absolutely no concerns about the fact that like maybe I wasn't moving into directly the same role. No issues at all. So that was really nice. The next part of the question was, people always say that going in-house is a pay cut. By how much? I mean, obviously that's going to depend as well. It's going to depend on what level that you were when you left big law and what level of the company you're going into when you go in-house. So that's going to depend. It's also going to depend on what market you're in. So if you're in like the market where you're making top of the market salary, yeah, you might take a huge pay cut because you're making so much money. Like if you're in like New York or something, you're making so much money, like they're just not gonna pay, you know, you're just probably not gonna get paid, you know, that top of the market compensation. However, you don't always have to take a pay cut. Actually was pleasantly surprised at the compensation that I was seeing in a lot of the roles when I was looking at in-house positions. Now, there were some that were like an insult. A lot of times if they really want you, they will try to work with you. So they might not be able to directly give you the money to true you up, but they might give you stock options or, you know, a guaranteed bonus or things like that to try to true you up. That's a question I can't really answer because it really just depends on so many factors. But yeah, if you're getting paid top of market compensation in a big market, you are likely to take a pay cut, and it could be pretty big. The next question I really liked, it said, if someone leaves a big law firm, can they ever come back? And it says, if they do, they started the same year and the same pay grade as when they left. So the answer to the question of if you leave big law, can you come back? Absolutely. I think it's more likely that people just don't come back. I mean, because they left for a reason. I've absolutely seen people leave big law and come back. I've seen people leave big law as an associate and negotiate with their way back as a partner. So that kind of leads into the next question of, you know, do you come back as the same year and same pay grade? Absolutely not. If you leave big law and you're gone for 5 or 10 years, you're absolutely not going to come back in at that same level. No, because you've been out and you've worked and you gained experience, you gained some really great experience. And so the law firm will compensate you for that. Especially if you go in-house. I mean, law firms typically are not mad at you if you go in-house. You know, they're like, oh, they see you as an opportunity to be partners. They see you as an opportunity for them to get business from you. So you always kind of keep that window open, especially if you left on a good note. I'll say even for myself personally, like when I remember when I left my first firm to move to my second firm, and I was so scared, you know, but I was moving out of state. It wasn't, you know, for any bad reason. And they absolutely told me, like, if you ever want to come back, you can. And I've heard that from people at every place that I've worked. So you absolutely can come back. It's just a matter of will you want to. The next question says, once you have your 2.0 year offer and you complete your summer, are you pretty much a shoo-in for post-grad offer, barring any craziness or inadequate work? Absolutely. Obviously, if you got a position in big law for the summer after your 2.0 year, you want to do great, you want to network, you want to interview the firm and make sure it's where you want to be at, but you're absolutely pretty much a shoo-in to work there after you graduate. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the program. They don't just give people these offers just to fill up their roster for the summer. They are recruiting and vetting for you to become a full-time employee after law school. So absolutely, you're pretty much a shoo-in. So you got that, congratulations. Feel good about yourself, do great, but yeah, congrats. Okay, you guys, okay, y'all, this video has gotten way too long, and so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I hope you guys found these videos insightful. Also, just a reminder, this is my perspective, this is my opinion. Obviously, there are people who might feel a different way or have different perspectives, and that's great. If you have them, drop them in the comments and let us know. This is a community, so any way we can help each other, I'm all for. Just as a quick reminder, you can follow me on Instagram at _theaspiringboss, where I'll post multiple times a week on there. And then also we have a group that is growing and thriving. It's called The Aspiring Lawyers. It's on Facebook. I will leave the link below if you want to join. On that note, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.